Well, some of you might remember from before that I am a UCC minister, but I work primarily now as a mental health therapist, and that's my main form of ministry. And so Giuseppe asked me, when he asked me to come preach this morning, he said, "Can you talk about mental health?" And I was like, "Oh, sure, Giuseppe, we've been friends for like 10 years, so I'll do what you want." But I also was like, gosh, I don't know. How do I actually talk about this? This isn't something that I talk about as much as something that I sort of do. And so I was like kind of puzzled for a minute. There's so much under the umbrella of mental health that we don't even really understand. It's interesting because oftentimes when people come to me, they'll say, well, I was diagnosed with this or I was diagnosed with that. And I also have to help them figure out a diagnosis, and especially because that's what's required by insurance companies. But to tell you the truth, the little secret is that kind of different than like if you go to the doctor and you list some symptoms and then they do some tests and then they tell you, oh, you have diabetes or you have asthma or you have cancer, you know, like they kind of know what you have from your symptoms. And they have like a way of actually proving it, right? Your blood results are like this. And that's really not true about mental health diagnoses. What we have with mental health diagnoses is we have a cluster of symptoms, and we have what you say is happening to you. And then I look at a cluster of symptoms and I say, okay, well, it could be this because these symptoms line up with these symptoms. And what we have in the mental health world is we have these cluster of symptoms and then we have a name, but we don't have a test. It's really just a conversation about what's happening for you and what has happened for other people that we call this thing. Does that make sense? So I say that not to undermine any diagnosis that you might have gotten, because that's really a serious thing and we carry those things, right? And it's what's true is your experience of your symptoms. And sometimes a diagnosis can be really helpful. Oh, okay, this explains why I'm feeling like this. But sometimes it can also be kind of limiting, because it's like, okay, so there's these symptoms in this cluster. Okay, so we call it that. Okay, now what? Right? Like, I still have to live with it. So that's one of the reasons why I kind of stumbled on, like, what am I going to talk about? Because I don't even really know what mental disease is or what mental health really is. What is it that I actually know that I'm doing? I'm going to get to that, but the more I started thinking about it, the more I started kind of concluding that what I'm doing when I'm doing mental health therapy with people is I'm holding space. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought about hospitality. So hospitality is actually one of the main themes in the entire Bible. Hebrew Scriptures, New Testament. It threads throughout. And hospitality, the Latin word in there is hospice, which means guest or stranger, or also host. So there's a whole kind of thing in hospitality around the Eucharist, the bread and the wine. But hosting the stranger, or hosting a guest, or hosting difference is a really key theme You find it in like all throughout the Hebrew scriptures. Is a very important custom in the cultures that are active in the Hebrew scriptures, especially in Judaism, among the people of Israel, and among like many desert cultures. Hosting a stranger was kind of how you stayed alive. You know the story. Well, I'm not gonna go into all the stories, but like one key story with about hospitality is when Sarah and Abraham host the angels who come and tell them that Isaac is going to be born. And they don't know they're angels. They just know they're strangers in the desert. And when you see a stranger in the desert, if you have a tent and you have food, you welcome them in, because that's probably the only food and water they're going to get that day. So hosting was kind of like a how you stayed alive kind of a rule for those cultures. But Giuseppe also told me that he's doing this whole series that he said is going to take a long time. So buckle up, you guys. On the book of Acts. And we just celebrated Pentecost, which is the coming of the Holy Spirit and the birthday of the church. And the book of Acts is also really about hospitality, because one of the big problems in the early days of the founding of the church was who's in and who's out. Now we have this problem still, don't we? In our culture, yes, we do. But who's in and who's out? It's kind of a key problem for the people who are following Jesus. They're not even really calling themselves Christians yet. They're just following Jesus and Jesus' teachings. Jesus is gone. He's died, come back, and then left again. And then the Spirit came. So they're like, okay, we got the Spirit. We're following Jesus. We're meeting together. And the people that were gathering and meeting together were radical Jewish. It was really a radical Jewish reform movement, okay? So Jesus is Jewish, and he was interpreting the scriptures and saying, this is kind of who we are. And people were coming together and saying, yeah, this is who we are. We're different. We're changing how we're reading these scriptures, and everything's in flux, and we're these people. And it was very like a powerful movement that was starting to gather. And other people who were around who weren't Jewish were like, well, we want to be part of this. Like this healing ministry and feeding ministry and teaching ministry. And this was kind of a problem in particular because there were customs among the Jewish people that you couldn't really sit down and eat with other people who were not who were not Jewish, because the food was different. And this is what happens in this dream. The food was different. In the Jewish culture at that time, there were prohibitions about eating certain kinds of animals. And that is the dream that Peter had. He's hungry, he goes up to pray. He falls into a trance. I think that's a kind of a cool little phrase. He falls into a trance, and he has this dream about these animals that he is not supposed to eat coming down, and God says, eat. And Peter's like, I don't know. I mean, you already told me I'm not supposed to, so now I'm supposed to. Peter's confused. 3 times he has this dream, and really the Spirit is kind of telling him through this dream, don't call anything impure that God has made clean. So Peter kind of keeps this in his mind. At the same time, Cornelius also has a vision. Now, Cornelius is a Roman centurion. Cornelius is a high up Gentile. He's from another culture. He's Roman. And he's a follower of God. He has this dream or this vision that he is supposed to go find Peter. And then his people, so they have these dreams at the same time, right? And then they have these dreams like days apart. Cornelius has this dream, I'm supposed to go find Peter. I'm a person of God, I'm supposed to go find Peter. He sends people from his household. Back then, a household was like a kind of huge operation. It was really like a commercial business. It's like he had lots of people working from him. So he sent a couple of people from his household to meet with Peter. These also would have been Romans, Gentiles. And so Peter then the next day has this dream that he's supposed to accept somehow something about the food, something about being clean or unclean. And then right when he wakes up, somebody comes to his door who he's not supposed to eat with. And what has this got to do with hospitality? Well, the part that we didn't read is the next part, where Peter meets the householders, and he then meets Cornelius, and they really sit down. And Peter has this, comes to this new understanding that the Holy Spirit truly is with Cornelius, and that the Spirit can come to more people than just the radical Reformed Jews. And we're going to have to figure out how to eat together. In part because the whole ritual at that time wasn't just the breaking of the bread and the wine that we do. It was an entire actual meal. That's what people did when they came to church. They sat down at a big table and they had a big feast. And they told the stories of Jesus and what Jesus was preaching and talking about. So it was an actual feeding ministry, feeding in the middle of church. So they had to figure this out. They had to figure out how can we be with somebody who is so different? Okay. So now we've got hospitality in Acts. The Spirit that comes, that helps us realize how to be with difference. What's this got to do with mental health? Reverend Dr. Sara Rosenau. I'm not following. Okay, so what I'm thinking when I'm thinking about what am I doing with people in the therapeutic space, what's actually happening? What I think I'm doing is I'm holding space. And I love this book and this quote by Heather Pelt, who has this really beautiful way of talking about what it's like to hold our, push away our assumptions and our judgment. Not just our assumptions and our judgment. That's kind of the first thing that we do when we meet people. It's not always even judgment in a bad way. It's just oh yeah, I know who you are. You're like this. You kind of look at this age, and you kind of look like you have this background, and then you're talking to me, and I'm, we're kind of just always, our brains, they're categorizing. Oh, you must be like that, right? We just kind of do that automatically. But then underneath that, we sort of start to relate to each other based on our preconceived notions and not on the actual person that's right in front of us, right? Because they could be kind of surprising. In fact, they are kind of surprising because we're all kind of surprising. We're all kind of not exactly like the boxes that our society puts us in, right? We're actually, we kind of know that about ourselves, right? I'm not exactly just these boxes. I'm a pretty complex individual. And so what Heather Pelt is saying is like, let's kind of, holding space is like holding open these judgments, these inherent kind of boxes that we put everybody in. But then she says something else. She says, not only are we holding open that, we're also holding open like the fact that something new might happen. Like she says, when we hold space, we do this without making someone else feel inadequate, which is what we do with our boxes, right? We also do this by making sure that we're not just fixing someone else, which is also what we do with our boxes. And this is something that happens a lot in the mental health industry. Like, oh, I've got these symptoms, and I'm like, oh, I know what to do. I know how to fix you. That's not what I think I'm doing there. I don't think that works. I don't have any answers, not really. So I'm holding open the idea that I know. And she also says you want to hold open, like trying to impact the outcome, like try to make sure what's going to happen. You know, in an exchange with somebody else, we're sort of like, oh, okay, hi, you know, like we sort of feel like we know what's going to happen. And then that thing happens. But what holding space is kind of, and I'm doing this because I think about it like a circle, where the things that we usually do are outside the circle. And inside the circle is the possibility of something new happening. When I'm doing this with an individual, what I'm really doing is I'm kind of holding open this space and engaging in this deeper listening where I don't actually know what you know about yourself and about your suffering. I don't actually know what you know about what's happened to you and how you make sense of it. What's happened to you and what's happening to you now and how you make sense of it. And so that's what I'm listening for. I'm listening for, how are you making sense of it? What happened to you and how are you making sense of it? And then what I'm inviting in my therapy sessions is, and this is kind of the twist, this is the hospitality's twist. Hospitality is not just, and I think this is in the Cornelius story, so I'm going to bring it all together here. Hospitality is not just holding open space for the stranger to show us who they are through their own words, through their own self-understanding. Hospitality is also holding space within ourselves for something new to happen for us. Because one of the things I think happens with mental suffering and mental wellness, like on the journey from mental suffering to mental wellness, is that we have to learn to hold space for our own transformation. And how we do that is really by facing the things that, it's like both facing the things that we don't want to face, the things that happened to us, the things that are happening to us, and also like telling them, you know, witnessing them, having them witnessed by somebody else. That's the thing that I find is the most transformational. And the reason I say that I don't know what's going on is because I don't really believe, like when I hold this space, I don't really believe that I'm affecting that kind of transformational change for somebody else. What I believe is that they can do it for themselves. Like we all have the possibility of healing within us. But what we need is the right conditions for that healing to take place. And I think of it like this. I think of it like a flower. A flower doesn't have any problems as a flower, right? A flower is just a flower. Its job is to be a flower and become a flower, yes? Now, sometimes a flower can't quite become a flower because it doesn't have the right conditions. It has not enough sunlight, or not enough, not the right nutrients in the ground, or not enough rain, right? So I think about this with each of you, with myself, with everyone who comes into my office. Yes, you have symptoms. Yes, you have problems. But nothing about you is actually broken because you are a flower. And you haven't yet had the moment, the space, the nutrients to become the flower that you are, or to feel the truth of that. Do you see what I mean? So that's you, and that's me, and that's everybody you encounter, okay? Now, it's true, we carry around a lot of suffering, and the world gives us a lot of suffering with the boxes, right? And that suffering is really real. So I'm not saying that you don't have suffering and that it's not harming you, or that you haven't been harmed. But the point of holding space is for you to really feel into that, to say that, what happened to you, what's hard, what are you struggling with, and for you to also feel the truth that in spite of all of that, you are also a flower. Okay? It's pretty beautiful when this happens. And I don't know when it's going to happen. And I don't even really know how it happens. All I know is I hold open the space, try to keep my own judgments, my own smart thinking. Oh, I know what's going on with you. I try to keep that out. Keep out my judgments and keep also kind of open to, I don't know what's going to happen. But what I do know is that the person in front of me has a very complex and emergent life that's unfolding every minute. And they came here with something to share. Maybe something they've never shared before, something that happened, something that's happening. And in that sharing, if I can hold open enough non-judgmental space, then they can meet themselves and offer themselves the healing that they have. I'm going to circle back now to Cornelius and Peter, because what this passage is really about, and what really is happening in the whole books of Acts, we'll see what Giuseppe has to say about it. But what's really happening is the early church is wrestling with, what is this spirit? What is this spirit that Jesus, our teacher, our friend, our God, has sent? What is this spirit going to be? And they think they know. Well, the spirit's like this, and the spirit's for these radical Jews. And then the spirit keeps coming in visions and in dreams and says, no, there's a little more here. The spirit is also coming to Cornelius, and now Cornelius is coming to your house, and now you're going to have to figure out how to eat with him. And Peter rightly concludes, oh, I don't really know anything about this spirit. But what I know is this spirit told me to figure out how to eat with this person at my door. And I say that because what I think is happening in this space that I'm talking about, how I kind of try to hold in the therapy room, but that really each of us can hold for ourselves and for each other. What's happening when we hold open this space of non-judgmental, positive regard, non-judgmental compassion, is that the Spirit enters. And it's the Spirit really who does the transformational work in ourselves, like the Spirit did with Peter. Oh, I'm going to have to leave my boxes. I'm going to have to learn something new. And the Spirit is working with Cornelius. I'm going to have to go to someone's house who I don't know if they're even going to receive me. And the Spirit is working in each of us when we start to realize, like, oh, I need to hold space for this thing in myself, this sorrow, this, a lot of times I heard one of my colleagues, my therapeutic colleagues say, all therapy is working with children. And what they meant is that one of the things we're really doing when we're working in the therapeutic context is we're working with the pain of our own childhood, our own inner child. Like the things that we experience and the ways we figured out how to survive. So a lot of times it's like bringing up those deeper experiences, and the beliefs that we associate with those experiences, like where we learn things as defenseless children, like, oh, okay, the way to survive this world is for me not to need anything from anybody because I can't count on that. Or the way to survive this world is I'm understanding I'm too much. So I'm going to have to know that I'm too much for people. Or people, and we all have different experiences and we all come to different conclusions because we all had really different childhoods, but we all come to conclusions. Somebody maybe comes to the conclusion, it doesn't really matter if I'm here. Like nobody sees me. Nobody's really taking care of me, so I don't really matter. We make these kind of conclusions about how we're related to. And is that true? Well, we live like that, right? We live with these deep beliefs. Well, I'm too much. I'm not enough. I don't matter. I'm not worthy. I don't belong. And then those beliefs that we have kind of repeat in our lives over and over again, and we get evidence. But in some ways, that's also just a box that we made. It's a real experience, and your childhood self really did experience that, and it was not okay. Because you are enough, you are worthy, you do belong. And the place where that begins is inside yourself, you knowing this to be true. And hopefully, if you need a therapist, you find one who holds space for you and reminds you of that truth. Or maybe it's not a therapist, maybe it's just a friend. Maybe it's a spouse. But it doesn't even have to be another person. It can be you holding space for yourself. No, I am enough. And really, it's the Holy Spirit, I think, that's active in all of that healing work that's happening internally for us, and that we can then give to others, because we really can't give to others something that we don't have. So that's key. The only reason I can hold space for people and remind them that they are enough is because I did that work for myself, because I didn't know. And I had to sit with myself and my own suffering to remind myself that I am enough, and I do belong. I belong to myself. I'm enough. And that allows me to sometimes, if I'm lucky, hold the space for something to happen. But I don't know. I'm here to tell you I don't know. And that's what I kind of told Giuseppe. All right, Giuseppe, I will preach on mental health, but really I don't know. And that is the place to begin. When we meet somebody else and when we meet ourselves, I don't know. But I'm here to hold open space, to listen. What is possible? A lot. Amen.